Welcome back to Film Garden, folks, for the last time here in Buenos Aires. And we have just seen 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, I think. Let me just check that.
What's the law on what you can and cannot say on a billboard? I assume you can't say nothing defamatory and you can't say fuck, piss, or cunt. That right?
Or anus?
Directed by Martin McDonah. Martin McDonah. And Frank McDonald. McDonald.
The more you keep a case in the public eye, the better your chances are of getting it solved.
We are going to review 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, as well as transition into our top 5 greatest dark or black comedies ever made. Because this is a dark comedy, and it is another example of Martin McDonah, the Irish writer / director of this film, and his ability to find that beautiful balance in between light and dark, comedy and tragedy. And like his other movies, Seven Psychopaths, and especially In Bruges, 3 billboards is another example of how to do this genre well.
Dixon, I'm in the middle of my goddamn Easter dinner. Sorry, kids.
I know, Chief, but I think we got kind of a problem.
3 billboards is like waiting for a punchline after sitting through a joke that you aren't sure you're supposed to laugh at while feeling extremely tense. McDonagh is the master of this kind of dark comedy, perfectly executed by In Bruges, and less so in Seven Psychopaths. There's a few traits in his movies that define what Martin McDonagh is all about. Explorations of death, consequences, characters that you shouldn't really be rooting for, and their redemptions, and a series of planted plot points that are interwoven and paid off in the most unexpected and ironic ways.
2 official complaints about those billboards.
From who?
The lady with a funny eye.
A lady with a funny fucking eye?
However, McDonagh's move from Europe to the States still feels like watching a drunk Irishman sitting in a red state bar waxing lyrical about death and hell and redemption while surrounded by Trump voters who have no idea what he's saying, let alone the depth of his musing. Overall, though, 3 billboards is a step up from Seven Psychopaths and keeps you guessing as to where it's all going to lead, which is refreshing in a movie.
There's a lot of good friends of Willoughby in this town, Miss Hay. Ow! Ah! You didn't happen to drill a little hole in the dentist today, did you?
Of course not.
The plot follows Frances McDormand's character, whose daughter was tragically raped and murdered 7 months previous to the film's opening. Basically, she decides to put up and pay for 3 billboards outside of this town, questioning why the local police force hasn't found the killer yet. And the chief of the police force, played by Woody Harrelson, Chief Willoughby, is the target of these billboards. And his character, he's not a bad guy. He's quite a good character. And from there on, that event sets off the series or the cycle of violence and hatred and consequences that basically affect the entire town, but especially a handful of these characters, including the members of the police force, the family members of Frances McDormand's character, and of course a midget.
He doesn't like being called a midget. He prefers dwarf.
People go around calling you a midget when you want to be called a dwarf. Of course you're going to blow your head off.
Martin McDonagh must have some kind of thing for midgets, because, or dwarves, should I say, dwarf, because that's 2 out of 3 movies where they have a prominent dwarf character, which is not a bad thing at all. We always love a little bit of Tyrion Lannister. His dialogue, as usual, carries that love of words the Irish seem to have fused in their system so effortlessly. Seriously, even just a wayside chat with an Irishman will deliver you some absolute pearlers. This is particularly evidenced in Sam Rockwell's opening scene, where he gets to trade rapid-fire verbal fencing with a character putting on the billboards at the start of the movie. Now let's talk about McDonagh's ability to interweave plot points. Whenever a loaded gun is introduced in one of his movies, no matter how seemingly offhand or random, you'll bet your house that it'll be paid off in some unlikely and ironic way later in the film. Similar to how the opening montage of Magnolia details how random actions and events can combine to create the most bizarro of deaths, McDonough's connection of setups and payoffs continue to be both sweetly surprising and subverting, though his choices to shift from Hollywood expectations of audiences is what separates this from being just another American movie with a satisfying bow at the end of it all. The performances are both comic and deeply touching. Frances McDormand is as tough as, is as tough as a boot, to quote one of the characters in the film. Woody Harrelson is gentle and wise. Sam Rockwell gets to play both hilarious and stupid at the same time, as well as with some hubris that he is hinted at right from the time I saw him in Charlie's Angels and Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which I think is still his best performance. And of course, we get our contractually obligated Sam Rockwell dance scene.
Baby, baby, I got the feeling. Deep on.
The violence in Three Billboards is very Shane Black. When it occurs, it's raw, impactful, and a little hard to watch, yet it serves to put a kind of black outline around some of these characters, severely shunting our feelings for them from one place to another. We're never really sure about any of them, and in one scene, we find ourselves flat out hating Sam Rockwell's character, the loose cannon cop, which only makes his journey to redemption even more powerful to see. The ending of the film feels a bit like an anticlimax, only because as an audience we're so tuned up to having things resolved that when some things aren't, you can't help but wonder. But this isn't a gripe, this is just something I felt at the time when I was watching it. But in hindsight, I think it's better this way. It's easy to walk away from Three Billboards feeling like it's much ado about nothing. But the journeys of the characters and their constant escalation of hatred and violence, and ultimately where to draw the line and stop the cycle, is what the film is really about. But after In Bruges so masterfully ends with all the plot threads seamlessly tied up, and with that big dramatic question at the end about the protagonist's ultimate fate, Three Billboards kind of pales in comparison.
And put an end to shit, you fucking retard. This is just a fucking start. Why don't you put that on your Good Morning Missouri fucking wake-up broadcast, bitch?
It didn't blow me away like In Bruges did, and there was a kind of heightened expectation around it caused by the awards season, but I wasn't disappointed. Hey, Papucho! It is a deeply touching dissection of how someone's actions can escalate violence in a small community. And with its clever and witty dialogue, some strong performances, and the beauty of McDonough's plot threads, the film is deserved of its critical acclaim. I just wasn't blown away by it as much as I was with the Irish filmmaker's first film, In Bruges. So I'm giving Three Billboards an 8 out of 10.
You did it! Congratulations!
Let's segue now into our top 5 greatest black comedies of all time. A couple of honourable mentions: Death to Smoochie, Broken Flowers, Click, Red State, and an Argentinian film, keeping in the flavour of being in Argentina, Wild Tales, which if you haven't seen, you should definitely check out, because it does Quentin Tarantino as good as Quentin Tarantino does. This movie is one of the most underrated comedies of all time, and it came out when people were experiencing their first wave of Jim Carrey fatigue, back in the 90s. It's a Ben Stiller film that perfectly captures the mayhem of Carrey's broken character. There are scenes in here that are infamous in how great they are, and how funny and hilarious they are, such as Jim Carrey beating up Owen Wilson in a restaurant bathroom.
People rarely take advantage of all my services. Let me help you wash up!
Getting in Jack Black's face during a friendly basketball scene. And of course, that karaoke scene.
1, 2, 3! When the truth is found to be lied.
But underpinning all of these hilarious sequences is a darker theme of abandonment, loneliness, mental illness, and the consequences of being raised by a TV.
And all the joy with...
We could have included plenty of Adam Sandler films on this list, such as Paul T. Anderson's Punch Drunk Love, or even the Jekyll and Hyde shift from early Sandler comedy to later Sandler tragedy in Click, but it's hard to look past Rain Over Me.
Oh, hey, Charlie! Charlie!
I ran into Charlie Fireman today.
While it does lean more to the darker and more dramatic aspects of dark comedy, it still has some great lighter moments. Funny enough, revolving more around Don Cheadle's dentist than Sandler's tragic, last remaining member of a family lost in the 9/11 attacks character.
Hey, Charlie, it's Alan, man. We know each other? Are you kidding me?
Who's Charlie Fireman, Daddy?
He was my college roommate. I haven't talked to him in a long time.
We were college roommates? Yeah, you slept naked most nights. And you were a sleepwalker. It was the worst 2 years of my life.
Sandler is absolutely brilliant in this film. Just looking at his face and hearing his cracked verbal expressions are enough to make us weep. And to remind us that this guy does have the acting chops to bring a tragic character to life.
I have these things that I don't like to think about. I can't do this. I gotta put these back home.
But then again, it's still Adam Sandler. Michael Winterbottom's exploration of the origin of dance music in Manchester fixes itself on the enigmatic role of Tony Wilson, played with typical Cooganism by the man himself, Steve Coogan. This movie sets up the Winterbottom/Coogan partnership that would eventually bring us Tristram Shandy and the Trip series of movies.
I'm Tony Wilson. June the 4th, the Sex Pistols play Manchester for the very first time. There are only 42 people in the audience. Inspired, they will go out and perform wondrous deeds.
24-Hour Party People is a lot of things boiled into one. It's a mockumentary, a tale about one man's cycle of success and failure, a dissection of one of the most active and most important explosions of the music scene in England, and, well, a hilarious romp through some of the dark materials that form the backdrop behind these multifaceted themes.
We are an experiment in human nature.
In particular, the very intense portrayal of the very intense Ian Curtis by the very intense and underrated Sean Harris. The suicide scene where Curtis hangs himself comes as swift and out of left field, and the reaction of Coogan to the news is heartbreaking and incredibly true to life.
He was found at his home this morning.
You joking?
No.
What a stupid bloody bugger.
And hats off as well to the town cry moment.
Ian Curtis, lead singer of Joy Division, has died today. Oh, yeah.
Number 2.
Excuse me, we were wondering if we could purchase a pheasant off of you.
This cult classic was written and directed by the genius and evasive Bruce Robinson, who also wrote the brilliant dialogue in The Rum Diaries in 2011.
Listen, you young brat. I ain't got no pheasants. I ain't got no birds. No more than you have.
Of course you have. You're the poacher.
If you've seen this diamond in a rough set in London and the English countryside, you'll know exactly what I mean by dark comedy, as it basically hovers a camera in front of the likes of Richard E. Grant.
How dare you?
Doing his best melodrama against a backdrop of drug and alcohol addiction, poverty, wretchedness, and sheer madcap mayhem.
Right, you fucker. I'm going to do the washing up.
Robinson's dialogue, perfectly timed and delivered by Grant and his co-pilot, one of the Doctor Who's, who you probably can't remember or have never really recognised, Paul McGann, is endlessly quotable and pure gold, lined with a scum of ick and discomfort that's encapsulated by the character's kitchen sink.
The entire sink's gone rotten. I don't know what's in here.
I told you, you've been bitten! Burn! Burn! The fucking kettle's on fire!
Watching these two out-of-work alcoholics trying to get away from it all in the country is equal parts hilarious and disturbing. And the chain of scenes making up a sequence where Withnail attempts to buy a pheasant from a local farmer, culminating in him using a shotgun to fish in a creek, is one of cinema's funniest sequences.
I might come and see you lads in a week. I might fetch you up a rabbit.
We don't want a rabbit, we want a pheasant.
If I hear more words out of you, I'll put one of these here black pods on you.
Don't threaten me with a dead fish.
If I see that silage heap hanging about up here, I'll take the bastard axe to him! Bastards! You all suffer! I'll show the lot of you! I'm gonna be a star!
And that brings us to number 1. At this point, most lists on the interwebs proudly place Doctor Strangelove at the top of this list, and deservedly so. Well, so we think, because at this point, Film Garden must confess we haven't seen it yet. But in true Martin McDonah subversion fashion, we're throwing a curveball here and claiming his 2008 masterpiece In Bruges as the greatest black comedy of all time.
If I'd grown up on a farm and was retarded, Bruges might impress me, but I didn't, so it doesn't.
In Bruges is a slow burn, but by the time you're listening to Colin Farrell mouth off about midgets and fat black kids while wrestling with the guilt of having murdered a small boy, you really can't help but be completely overwhelmed by two opposing emotions tugging at you from both ends, misery and hilarity.
Well, you lot ain't going up there.
Why?
It's all windy stairs. I'm not being funny.
What exactly are you trying to say?
What exactly am I trying to say? These are a bunch of fucking elephants.
Fight you.
No film works the binary emotions with such craft and artistry as In Bruges does.
Little fucking cunt.
The performances are top-notch, the writing as good as Robinson at his best.
Get down on you. Exactly at what point was it that all skinheads suddenly became puffs? Used to be you were a skinhead, you just went around beating up Pakistani 12-year-olds. Now it seems a prerequisite to be a fucking bum boy.
And, well, who could forget Ray Fiennes as one of the cinema's most badass villains of all time, the foul-mouthed Harry.
Leave my kids fucking out of it. What have they done? You fucking retract that bit about my cunt fucking kids.
I retract that bit about your cunt fucking kids.
Insulting my fucking kids? That's going overboard, mate.
I retracted it, didn't I?
So that is our top 5 greatest black comedies of all time. As well as the review for 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. That's it from Argentina. We are going to come back to... We're returning to Melbourne in a couple of days, and we're going to bring you some more movie magic and some reviews. Plus, if you haven't already, check out the top ways to fix Episode 9 Star Wars, and stay in tune because we have actually written the script. We have written a piece of fan fiction that is an industry standard feature film, movie length script for Episode 9 Star Wars, and you should check it out because, well, don't check it out if you don't want to be spoiled, because this will spoil Episode 9 for you, because it will be better than whatever they bring out, and they should actually just take this and just fucking film it. Thank you for watching from Argentina. This is JB and Papucho, Raul, the Road Warrior in the background, saying goodbye.